Welcome to The Atypical View. I'm your host, Lauren Florio, a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in autism, ADHD, and broader neurodiversity. As a fellow neurodivergent mind, I'm here to help us learn and spread awareness on all things mental health, as well as help us unlearn harmful stereotypes by providing psychoeducation rooted in research and lived experience rooted in my atypical view. The Atypical View is obviously this podcast, but it's also my private practice where I provide therapy to clients here in California with me and provide neurodiverse coaching to others worldwide. So, without further ado, let's jump into The Atypical View. Welcome to today's episode. We will be diving into a topic that is deeply personal to many late diagnosed neurodivergent people, which is autistic masking. Masking generally refers to autism, but there's definitely some discourse around other neurodivergent individuals who feel that they relate to masking. Sometimes we call that camouflaging, but I want to focus more specifically on masking through the autistic experience today. Masking is one of those things you don't often realize you've been doing until suddenly you're aware of it, and then everything seems to have a shift. So in today's episode, I want to explore what masking is, why it's often misunderstood, and how it shows up across gender, support needs, and individuals who have experienced trauma. In a world that often misunderstands neurodiversity, many autistic people and others with neurodivergent brains learn to hide their differences. This act is called masking. And while it can help people blend in, it often comes at a significant emotional and psychological cost. So let's jump into our first segment of the day, our psychoeducation. Masking is the act of suppressing natural behaviors or mimicking neurotypical ones to appear more socially acceptable. This can look like forcing eye contact, rehearsing or scripting conversations beforehand, suppressing stimming like hand flapping, rocking, fidgeting, copying other people's expressions and tones or social behaviors. I definitely think that this can happen from movies. We might watch movies and see how people act, and unfortunately, the reality is that film is not real life. Might look like over apologizing, mirroring someone else, or really people pleasing just to avoid conflict. It's a way to reduce the risk of being judged, rejected, or even punished. But it's not a conscious and manipulative act. In many cases, masking is a survival strategy rooted in trauma, coming from the four trauma responses, one of which most closely related to masking and that people pleasing is the fawning response, which is a pattern of people pleasing and appeasement developed in response to fear or even social danger. Rather than fight or flight, individuals learn to blend in, be, quote, good, and stay small to stay safe. For many late diagnosed autistic people, especially those assigned female at birth, masking began early in life. They learned what certain behaviors weren't accepted, or worse, were punished, and so they adapted, often without even realizing it. So let's take a minute and talk about why masking is more common in women and marginalized genders. A traditional diagnostic model for autism was based largely on research around young white boys. So as a result, I'm sure you can understand, many autistic girls, women, and non-binary individuals went undiagnosed for years because their autistic presentation just looked different. These individuals are often more socially aware due to society, more attuned to others' emotions, and more heavily conditioned by those societal norms and expectations to be nice and polite and easy to get along with. And this pressure leads to more intense and prolonged masking, which can lead to misdiagnosis, a burnout, anxiety, depression, and obviously identity confusion. We also see a differentiation between the levels of autism and that masking. Autism is often categorized into these three support levels, which these can be misleading, which I talked a little bit about in my last episode. So, someone who masks well might appear to have more mild symptoms around autism from the outside, when in fact they are struggling deeply internally. So, masking can obscure the level of support needs someone actually needs. A person may be labeled level one, meaning they require minimal support, when their inner distress, fatigue, sensory overwhelm suggests that they may need much more help. Masking doesn't mean a person is less autistic, it just means they've adapted in costly ways. I want to take a minute to talk about why masking becomes harder over time. So many late diagnosed autistic people describe a feeling of things getting harder, not easier, after discovering that they're autistic. And that's because we become aware of the mask. It becomes heavier to wear. The behaviors that felt automatic now feel exhausting and inauthentic. And yet, unmasking in the world that still expects conformity can obviously feel unsafe. There's some science around neural pruning and masking and skill regression that I felt to be very eye opening. You're experiencing skill regression, you stopped masking or you were aware of masking, and all of a sudden your brain goes, oh, I don't need to know this. Oh, we don't need to mask. We just learned this thing about ourselves. Our brain does this thing where it prunes, meaning it removes parts of our neurons. And I kind of imagine our skills as these bridges. And if our bridges have some stones pulled from them, they were pruned away, it's going to make it harder to get from one side of the bridge to the other. So, if a skill in your brain is a bridge in which you learn to be able to cross really effectively, pruning from learning that you're autistic, learning that you've been masking, and your brain goes, oh, well, I don't need this anymore. It's not this automatic thing anymore. Those stones get taken away and it's harder to cross that bridge. I want to just let you know you can replace stones down. You can relearn skills. You will learn to relearn skills without masking. Perhaps that is a bigger conversation and a topic for a different episode. Regardless, the result of prolonged masking is burnout, that identity loss that I mentioned, loneliness, and a desperate longing to be seen as we are. I've also talked to many late diagnosed individuals that truly do not know how to take off the mask, yet the mask is still essentially strangling them from the inside out. So, as we close out our psychoeducation portion, I just want to review and clarify masking is not lying, it's not manipulation, it's not about being fake, it is about survival, especially in a world that has long failed to recognize, accommodate, or embrace neurodivergent people. Recognizing masking is the first step towards self compassion, healing, and over time, authenticity. So let's transition into our next segment and talk about what masking can actually look like in real life. So, this is our second segment, the atypical view, my atypical view. For me, I didn't realize I was masking until after I started learning about neurodivergence and my own autistic experience. Post diagnosis is when a lot of my masking awareness came in. And truthfully, when I realized I was masking, it felt like someone had turned the lights out in a room I didn't even know I was locked inside of, which, as you can imagine, is pretty terrifying. So, I mentioned in my last episode my diagnostic timeline of where both ADHD and autism came in for me. ADHD came first, autism came way later. I am a significantly high masking individual. It has been something that I have been working on significantly in the last couple years because truthfully, it is exhausting. I come home from social engagements and I need days to recover. And I have a deep sadness because I will have friends who we hang out and they're like, why don't we go grab lunch tomorrow? Why don't we go do XYZ thing tomorrow? And I'm like, I need a week from this. I love you. I love our time together. I wish I could spend day after day. But as I've gotten older, the awareness around masking has made it so challenging to be able to keep up with my social world. Any place where I feel like I cannot be entirely authentic, and that's not an insult to my friends, that's an insult to the environment in which we have to hang out in, aka the world. I can't just always be fully unmasked because it's not always safe to. I have throughout my life, when my mask has fallen, intentionally or otherwise, been accused of being on drugs because I'm like stimming and not making eye contact with anyone and looking around the room and probably a little bit nervous and fidgeting my fingers. And people on multiple occasions have accused me of being on drugs. And I am very aware of that. And now I'm like, people might think I'm actively on drugs. They may be fearful of me. They may be judgmental of me. And that causes me a lot of anxiety. Some of the masking that I look back on and look at how masking was for me, I have done what's called scripting so much in my life. I used to spend hours in the shower saying out loud what I think, like fights with someone that have never happened, that I'm like I think that they could happen and I want to be prepared for them. And I just spend hours and hours talking out loud. Sometimes it's not even fights. Sometimes it's literally just basic conversations with someone that feel daunting to me. I talk to myself in the mirror. I talk to myself out loud. I am constantly reviewing possible situations in my head and out loud. That's improved a lot over building some confidence in myself and just time, but it definitely still happens. I think that was one of the ways that I coped the most. I definitely mimicked others' behaviors, and I still to this day curate little personalities for someone specifically. And I hate that because it's not that the part of the personality that I'm curating for someone doesn't include aspects of me that are genuine. However, it's not my full authenticity. And if I can't have full authenticity, then they're getting something that's maybe not fake, but maybe not totally genuine. Then there's only so much closeness that person can achieve with me before I go, oop, you can't access that file. And now my capacity of connection, of human connection, is capped. And so I have to either be honest and say, actually, I'm this way. I'm sorry that I came off that way, but I am this way, which is a hard conversation and a scary conversation. So it's easier to just go, oop, our relationship is limited now. And so if I can't create connection and closeness, then what do I have? If I don't have that closeness, what do I have? I have superficial relationships and nobody wants that. I don't want that. I guess I can't speak for everybody, but there's this pathway to like true connection, and it takes vulnerability and authenticity to get that true love and connection that we want with people. And so in my close relationships, part of unmasking was actually sharing my diagnosis because that made me feel understood in a new way. And it helped the conversations of, I don't think I've actually been comfortable in this pattern that I've been participating in you, and I need to shift. And I need to know that's okay. And if it's not okay, I guess I can't blame you, but I really want it to be okay because I really love you and value you, and I want closer connection with you. So, disclosing to some of my close friends, obviously to my partner, helped transition into I don't have to make prolonged eye contact with these people anymore. I don't have to hide my stims in front of them. I don't have to be a different version of myself that feels inauthentic anymore. I can have a little more authenticity, and I won't pretend that process wasn't hard. It was absolutely hard. But it has helped me connect so much closer. And now at home with my partner, he probably doesn't love this, but I can do my echolalia stimming, which is a lot of sounds that I do. I make a lot of sounds with my mouth. I make a lot of repeating sounds. I quote a lot of things out loud or sing little segments of songs over and over probably drives my partner a little crazy, but he's very accepting of it and it helps me feel safe to do it, which means I'm less irritable, I'm less agitated, I'm not masking at home, and I can have a place to repair and recover, which is wonderful to have someone who fully accepts you entirely as you are. That is the most beautiful experience of love I've ever had. And I truly wish that upon everyone. I do think inherently there are some gender expectations that participated in my masking. I think it formed a bit of who I should be as like a sexual person. I think I perceived that the world, like women are supposed to be sexual beings for a very long time, and so I presented myself as that, and that caused me a lot of harm, and I have a lot of regret around that. It didn't feel rooted in authenticity. I have no shame of being perceived as a sexual being or anything like that, but it wasn't always rooted in authenticity. It was rooted in acceptance and being liked by others. And I thought that was what was expected to me. Unfortunately, I do think I was a bit of a pick me, whoops, because I was trying so desperately to fit in. And I definitely regret that. So I can see where there's like some gender expectations that definitely formed parts of my mask. I do think inherently, just from being a woman, we're praised a lot more for being quiet and polite, being independent, being easy. God, I just wanted to be easy so bad. I wanted to be a low maintenance person so bad. That's how I wanted to be perceived. And part of my mask was trying to be perceived that way in certain situations. And that's not true. I I have a lot of health issues. I have a lot of expectations. I have a lot of needs. I have needs. I'm not a low maintenance person. And that's okay. I think that's a big thing is just recognizing like it's okay. I think I mean I'm more high maintenance in the sense of like having a relationship with me is probably hard. There's a lot to adjust to, and that's okay because I am also a really unique individual and I bring a lot to the table. And part of what makes me hard to maybe get to know and understand also is probably, I hope, pretty rewarding of getting to have a unique friendship, have a unique relationship with someone. I know a lot of facts, so I can tell you a lot of things, and I think that's I think that's fun. I want to take just like a brief moment to talk about why masking gets harder. I know earlier I mentioned that there is some connection between skill regression and recognizing that you're masking. It's this idea of neural pruning. And I think that, like I said, I could spend a whole episode on this, but one of the things that I talk about a lot is cooking was one of the things that was heavily linked to masking for me. It was performative. I could cook meals for someone that were so impressive and it would make people like me. I literally professionally cooked for people in my life. I worked as a assistant and a caretaker and I literally cooked meals for who I was employed by and I felt so good about myself from that, and it was part of the mask. It was part of me being a put together person, mind you, at home by myself. I could not put a meal together for myself very frequently because I was struggling so much, but performatively I would cook these multi-course meals for other people, and it was part of how I masked and showed that, made myself feel quote unquote normal. When I recognized that I was autistic and recognized that I was masking unintentionally, my what I believe to be neural pruning took away my ability to cook. And for over a year, I started burning things. I started, I literally like messed up mac and cheese, guys. Like it was so bad. But I want to let you know that if you're going through skill regression because you've learned about masking and you've learned about being autistic, you can learn those skills again. Those can come back. And you're not building the bridge from scratch. You're just replacing some stones through a perspective that is rooted in authenticity. So learn to cook to nourish yourself, for example. Don't cook performatively. We want to build the bridge so it's easy to cross in an authentic way, if that makes sense. I do want to close out that I want to be clear that I am not telling you to throw caution to the wind, unmask, be your authentic self. I am aware that the world around us is not, it's not safe to do that right now. And I am not promoting you do something that makes you feel vulnerable in a scary way. So, as I'm talking about masking and I'm saying that being more authentic is better for our brains, I understand that the other side of the coin is that unmasking in public is inherently an unsafe thing to do right now. And so, by no means do I want to encourage you to put yourself in a position where you feel like you would be in danger. As we move into this third segment, our closing segment, and the call to action, I want to acknowledge that if you are listening to this and you've been masking for a long time, first I want to say, I see you. I know how lonely and heavy it can feel to constantly be monitoring yourself just to feel safe or accepted. I know how painful it is to question what aspects of yourself are authentic. That part is scary. That part is hard. Getting to know who you really are again. Sometimes the mask was on for so long that it is hard to know what's mask and what's not. And that's so scary. And I'm with you. You have adapted in the best way you knew how. Your body kept you safe, but you can learn to begin to unlearn at your own pace in moments of safety, in moments home alone, or in privacy with safe people. So this week, I invite you to just notice if you can tell when you're masking without judgment, but instead with a gentle curiosity. And if it feels safe to do so, try removing the mask. Maybe just a peek, maybe a peek. Maybe that means stimming freely or saying out loud, I do not have the energy for that today. The goal is not to perform a new version of authenticity. It is just to slowly reconnect with yourself underneath all of those layers. You do deserve to take the mask off. You deserve to be seen as you are. You deserve to be you. If you didn't resonate with anything about masking today, what I would call to you and ask of is if you notice that someone is behaving differently than what you might expect or what you might deem to be normal, maybe just take one pause and look inwardly and ask yourself, one, what it means to be normal anyway, and two, if this person's differences actually negatively impact you in any way. I would encourage you to be more welcoming of someone who is not making eye contact or is stimming and moving their body in an unfamiliar way. And you can be a part of the solution as we bring in some acceptance for autism. Thanks for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it, subscribe, leave a comment or a review, or send it to someone who might benefit from the psychoeducation, or just need a little reminder that they are not alone. If you are interested in my coaching or therapy services, you can reach out to me directly and connect with me at theatypicalview.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and I hope we can stay connected.